Hey everyone, today we want to talk about Fitt's law. It's called Fitt's law. A lot of times it's cited as Fitt's law, which is actually incorrect. Fitt's law is based on a 1954 paper by Paul Morris Fitt, where he created this equation that more or less says the accuracy and the time is relative to like the distance and the size of an object. The equation isn't so much important. What we really care about is sort of this definition of the time and or accuracy to a target depends on the ratio of its distance and size. This is very apparent in games, and it's used as a challenge, where clicking on small things that are far away are more difficult than clicking on large things that are very, very close to you. It's used all the time in any kind of interactive game, especially mobile games. In software, it's used kind of the opposite way in that you want to keep your high interactivity buttons very close to where your mouse is. You want to make them large enough to click. If you start putting two targets very close to each other, you should expect there to be some misclicks between the two. So you really want to keep it in mind as you're laying out a user experience, making sure that the size of your buttons, the size of your actions, that sort of stuff are really easy to get to, very quick, and very accurate in their clicking. Let's take a look at Asteroids here in Among Us. This is one of my favorites in regards to Fitt's law because you can see the very stark difference between games and software when it comes to Fitt's law. In games, you use Fitt's law as a bit of a challenge. You want things to be hard to click. That is part of the gameplay. Whereas in software, you don't want that to be the case. You want your buttons to be easy to click. You want to have high accuracy when people are trying to click what they want. And you can see that here. Depending on the size of the asteroids that are coming across and their distance from my cursor, that will provide that challenge. So say, for instance, we were to see a large asteroid here far away, a small asteroid here far away, a large one close, and a small one close. You can kind of make a guess as to which ones are going to be the most accurate. And inside of gameplay, you try to do that very, very quickly because you have limited time to make that decision. Your large and close one is probably your fastest, followed by your close and small one, and then very closely by your large and far one as well. And then your far away and small one is obviously going to be probably your hardest asteroid to hit. The interesting thing about games is that in addition to distance and size as part of the equation for Fitt's law, you also have to deal with movement. These asteroids are moving across the screen in different speeds and different trajectories. So not only do I have to make a snap decision on which one is the easiest for me to hit, I have to get my cursor to where it's going to be when I get there. And depending on the size, that can be very difficult. In a game like this Asteroids, my window is pretty limited. An asteroid isn't going to go too far out of that realm, but if you're playing something like a first-person shooter and you have the whole screen to play with, especially when you're doing something like sniping, I may have very tiny targets at the very exteriors of my screen. And then it becomes a challenge as to, well, what do I try to shoot first? Am I going to try to hit the one that's furthest away? Do I try to do a calculation on what one's the most important? So you can kind of see it starts to become part of the challenge in using Fitt's law as opposed to software, where you really are just trying to make sure that your buttons are highly accurate and that your buttons are very easy to get to. You don't want misclicks with what the user wants to do. So let's take a look here at Asteroids as it plays out. You can see that as asteroids come across the screen, if I get a clump of 2 or 3 of them together, it's significantly easier for me to break up those asteroids and get that shot, as opposed to the one moving really quick across the top, or maybe a smaller one kind of moving along the very exterior bottom where it's harder for me to get to in time. Now let's take a look at the prime shields task. You can see as it's laid out here, I have a nice 3 in a row that's very easy for me to click. When it comes to the shields game, these are all the same size. So it doesn't matter necessarily the size, it's really only that proximity to my cursor for being able to click. So for instance, with these, I could very easily click these 3 in a row and it wouldn't be hard for me to get them. But say for instance, the shields task spaced those out a little more like this one, this one, this one, I probably have a significantly higher chance of failing something like that because I have that distance to move between all of those clicks. When they're right in a row, it's very easy for me to click. And you can kind of see that as this task plays out. It takes me like a couple of seconds to really get that down. Now let's take a look at the unlock manifolds task. This one's very interesting and pretty obvious as well because the scrambling of these numbers, you can kind of see 1, 2, 3, 4. As I click those, this task can become more challenging or less challenging depending on the proximity of those clicks. In this example, for instance, I have 5, 6, 7, and 8 really close to each other. Whereas 1 and 2, and especially like 8 and 9 are in polar opposite corners, it does take me a little bit more time to get to those further ones, and I have a significantly higher chance of misclicking them. You can see this as this task plays out. I can get to 5, 6, 7, 8 significantly faster than it takes me to get to 1 and 2 or 8 and 9, etc. So that's a quick explanation of Fitt's law and how it works within gaming and UX. And why you can see the difference between the two. Remember that if you've liked what you've seen here, you want to learn more about some of these design principles between games and software, hit the subscribe button, follow us to get more of these videos and learn more about this stuff. Thanks for watching.